Hi guys, my name is Arthur Hernandez. I've played for a couple of years. I've had a couple injuries, so I haven't been able to play lately. But I'm really excited to be here. I've actually never been to an Arrows Tails before. So my understanding is it's like a roast, so we all get to make fun of Schaad for like an hour, right? I'm excited about that. So I'm just going to share my brief story of meeting Schaad, and then I'll turn it over to him, and we'll go through his little PowerPoint presentation. But we met playing kickball. And I don't think I liked him. He was kind of a jerk. I don't know that that's changed that much, to be honest with you. I think he didn't like me because we always beat his team, I think is what it was.
That's a lie.
So, he started this thing. I think he posted something on Facebook, and we were both coaches. And so I said, I'll give that a try. I certainly didn't think I was going to be playing as much as I did. I remember I think I started the first game, and I was just completely shocked. But it's been a real joy to play rugby, and it's been a real joy to get to know Schaad, and I've get to know his wife, who our family loves. I tell this to Vivian a lot, but I don't know if I've ever told you, Mike. I think Vivian is so good for you, and I think that she makes you a better man. I don't know. I tell that to Vivian all the time, but his wife is amazing. She's actually the godmother to my child. As well, so it's been a real joy to get to know the Schaad. So with that, Mike, we starting here, or we go to the next slide?
Yeah, we can start here.
Okay.
First of all, thanks for having me up here. Talking about myself is certainly not, it's my favorite thing on the planet, but in reality, I'm not all that good at it.
I don't. He founded the Arrows Rugby Club. I don't know if everybody knows that or not. So I don't think I mentioned that earlier.
If you want to go to the next slide, I tried here to make it a little different and put some things in that were just some pictures, some stories, some things that I think about, some different quotes that I have kind of carried throughout my life. For some reason, I don't know why it hits goes, but the first thing I put up there was a man wrestling with God, which is kind of a reference to the story of Jacob in Genesis. I grew up in a very strict household, very much Catholic through and through, very much into the faith, very strong faith background for both my parents, and just very strict. And really what I've seen come out of those type of situations with people, are they're usually fall into three categories. One, they just kind of always follow the path. That's kind of like my brother Jake. And then you have the absolute rebel who just kind of forgets it, just kind of rebels against everything and goes the complete opposite direction. And then at least in my case, I was kind of right down the middle, where it's just a constant wrestling match with God, right? Like, what is my parents telling me? What is the world telling me? I'm one of those people that just kind of has always pushed the limit. Like if here's the line, can I get 1 foot over it? And that's really kind of been my relationship. I've had really times in my life where it's been very, very strong, and times where it's been very, very weak. And I'm blessed to know that I've never lost it. I've never gone completely off the deep end, I would say, where I've just never had it, or really never had a time where I just stopped going to church. But it's a battle. And the reason I bring that up is because, it's easy for a lot of us, or maybe some of us, to look at the guys at this club and be like, especially if you're new, I'm not like that guy, or, they seem to have their faith down, and that's why I brought it up. I think it'll always be a wrestling match for me. And it was when I was young. It's still now. Vivian's trying to beat it out of me, but it's a struggle. Growing up, I was actually born in Ohio. I lived there until I was about 10 years old. The first 10 years of my life was really country kid. Out on farms, out in small towns. A big city to me was Huntington, West Virginia, which was, 150,000 maybe. That was the city. I only lived near Columbus till I was about 3, and then we moved down into the southeast corner, right there where the S is, basically, on the West Virginia. So, I was in rural, country, farm town. My dad's side of the family are dairy farmers.
Is this your farm?
If you look down to the right, that's my grandpa's farm. They own about, right now, but 3 of my uncles run it now, but They own about 3,600 acres, milk about 550 head of cattle. It's one of the biggest dairy farms in southeastern Ohio. So that was my life, and when you're in that kind of community, faith is a little bit more of it's a way of life, like your aunts and uncles may not be that faithful or that into their faith, but they're going to have their butt in their seat on Sunday because that's what they've done for the last 30, 40, 50 years, that's just how things are done. The other thing that's to know, I guess, growing up is that I've always been around big families. My dad's one of 13 and my mom's one of 9. If you look down here in the corner, that is my family. Those are first, second, third, fourth generation Schaads. I think there's about 105 there or whatever. So I've always liked big crowds. I've always liked getting to know lots of different people. I will tell you this. I'm very bad when I go to a new town, keeping up with old friends. It's just I don't know. I've just always been able to make new friends, and I don't know. I don't keep up with that. That's one of my weaknesses. I think that kind of comes from the big family and just constantly meeting new people. I'm one of 4. I'm the oldest of 4. Somehow I'm the shortest and the fattest. Not by too much, but that's just the reality. And then if you see up here, just one thing. My grandpa's turning 95 in about 3 weeks. He's a World War II vet, fought in the Battle of the Bulge. Cool little story here is that was his first tractor like 65 years ago, and my uncles and my dad paid to get it completely restored. That's why it looks so brand spanking new. But so rural country life was kind of what I knew and grew up in. Which was fun. You do a lot of different things. We had about a 70-acre farm growing up. When I was 10, and we moved to Dallas, which is complete 180. And how did we get to Dallas? My mom and dad met at University of Steubenville, in Franciscan University, I guess is what it's called, in Steubenville, Ohio. My mom's from Dallas. My dad's from Ohio. They met there. Eventually, mom and dad wanted to move. Mom wanted to go home. We packed up. We moved to Dallas. So once I got to Dallas, you can kind of keep it there for now. But once I got to Dallas, you can go to the next slide.
Go back.
Yeah, you can just keep going forward, whatever. We'll come back to that. I didn't really think
we prepared a lot for this.
So what was funny about that is all of a sudden I'm in Dallas. I'm in a big city. I'm meeting a lot of new people, a lot of new kids. And I was the country kid, which was just kind of funny, Right now I don't really consider myself much of a country guy. I'm probably a little more city slicker than I am country, to be perfectly honest. But for 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, I was just the hick. That was kind of how everybody treated me, whatever. So a couple things that are funny about growing up back in Dallas was my mom grew up in a charismatic community up there. For those of you that don't really know, charismatic is basically a Catholic that has more of a devotion toward the Holy Spirit in the plainest of terms. And then you can go more extreme from there. What is hilarious, I thought it was super ironic that I was following Matt Abermite because, far traditional meets charismatic. I mean, you can't talk to, this is a very inner Catholic joke, but you want 2 total extremes. I will tell you this, I was never in Life Team. Okay, we're not Life Team. All right,
is that a problem to be in Life Team?
No, not
okay.
Really. But yeah, I grew up in a charismatic Catholic community, so I don't pray in tongues, but whatever. A lot of people that I know or my family's friends do. So what I'm saying is, I grew up in a very Catholic, faith-oriented way. Went to a Catholic school for middle school. I was homeschooled until 6th grade. I stopped homeschooling when it was time no longer. Back when I was in high school or middle school, there weren't Catholic. There were not homeschool teams. So when I could no longer play football, I told my mom I'm going to school. So that's that. Then we went into school. I went to a little Catholic school that had like 130 kids. But luckily, Mass every single day, which is still very, very rare. There's not that many schools that have Mass every single day. So that was really cool. If there's any questions on any of this stuff, stop me. Yeah.
Which of those kids is you?
In the middle.
That kid's too skinny, man.
In the middle. Yeah. I really did. Once I got to high school, I kind of slept my way through school. I am not a grade A student by any means. Again, kind of that wrestling with my parents, wrestling with God. They told me I had to have B's to play sports, so that's what I got. My biggest things growing up were football and basketball and sports in general. That was kind of life. I went to a really small high school that I had 36 kids in my class, 18 guys, whatever is left in girls. Very, very small. I went to so charismatic on one side, on Sundays going to prayer meetings and things like that. A Legionnaire of Christ school. So again, kind of the yin and the yang. The very disciplined, very focused on the complete person, forming the complete person, body, mind, spirit, soul. So I loved it. I grew up youth group, Boy Scouts, sports, volunteering a lot at various things, doing anything and everything I could. My dad's a workaholic. He grew up, knows no other way. If we could pay somebody to do plumbing or he could do it, we were going to do it. So Saturdays was usually work. It was always work. Whether it was at the farm, whether it was in Dallas, we always had tasks, chores, whatever. Working hard is just kind of the way we grew up, which was great because I learned a lot. But a lot of kids would be out partying, playing, doing this, doing that. It was, you turn 16, you get the job, you do this. There wasn't a lot.
What was your first job?
My first job was Spring Creek Barbecue as a line boy, and then I eventually got to the chopping block where I cut up whatever.
Boiled their brisket there?
Huh?
Don't they boil their brisket?
No, they smoke it. Is it high-end barbecue? No, it's fast. It's chain barbecue, but for chain barbecue, it's pretty good.
You think you had a pretty strong faith in high school, or do you think it was?
Yeah, high school. I was pretty darn strong. Again, growing up around really good Catholics, really good support system, a lot of family, a lot of my friends had a lot of friends in this charismatic community that it was just a good kind of a safe way to grow up.
Where'd you go to college?
After high school, well, let me finish with high school real quick. Really, the only other things you need to know is with high school, sports were my life. I played center and linebacker in high school for football. Eventually got a scholarship. I did go the Benedictine. We can go to the next slide.
What's the helmet on the bottom left?
That was my high school. That's my high school football team.
Can you explain the SEALs to us?
No, I cannot. This is kind of where I wanted to draw one of the other points, or one of the other themes, I guess, was that to me one of the most powerful things is
I'm not doing that.
one of the most powerful human force are those truly living the gospel. And I wanted to bring that up as a way of saying that you're going to hear a lot of people in the church that are hardcore traditional Latin Mass, Vatican II screwed up the church, and then you're going to hear the exact opposite, right? And I think the beauty of the church and what I've seen is we have avenues to Christ, right? We have pathways through the saints, through the devotions, through Mary, through Joseph, through the Holy Spirit, through whatever. I have the best Catholics I've ever met in my life have been on both ends, but they don't talk about the other end because it's not their focus, right? I've seen charismatics that will absolutely wipe the floor with traditionalists, and I've seen traditionalists that are way holier than 99% of the charismatics, right? At the end of the day, our goal and duty in life is to know, love, and serve God, right? And to do so in the boundaries or within the framework of the Catholic Church, not to argue about, in my opinion, I'm just sharing opinions, not to argue about the finer points that are really, in my opinion, put there kind of as distractions and kind of blocks. So I kind of wanted to set that up because what I've seen is the people that are doing amazing things are not worried about what one extreme or the other extreme, or really how they're not worried about how they're living their faith. They're worried about sharing it, right? I wanted to put that out there because it's something I really do believe, and it's kind of a nice juxtaposition because we've kind of had both sides. I love this club because we have guys that grew up more in the traditional side. We have guys that grew up on the life teen charismatic side. We have guys that might not have had a faith at all, but at the end of the day, we're all here for kind of one purpose. So, any questions? Anything? So I guess this is where the story kind of heats up a little bit, I guess, going to college. I went to Benedictine College, which is a beautiful Catholic school that's been around for over 156 years now, I think. It sits on the bluffs of the Missouri River overlooking the Missouri. It's in northern Kansas. The only reason I went there is because I got a football scholarship. Really, I wanted to keep playing football. I wanted to get away from home. I didn't have the best grades, so going to Ivy League or anything like that, that was never on the table. I had no desire to do that. So I ended up at Benedictine School of a town of 10,000 people. A school of 1,500. Couple funny things about Atchison, Kansas is it's at one time it was the wealthiest town in all of Kansas because it had the railroad back in the early 1900s. It used to be a town of about 120,000, and then so a lot of history, a lot of old buildings, a lot of just kind of craziness. 10,000 people, 14 bars. So I mean. The other thing I really liked about it is that almost half of the student body was there to play sports, and the other half was there to play to really because of their faith. And you had this kind of iconic clash right in the middle, right? Because if you wanted to get in trouble and drink and party and smoke and sex and drugs and whatever, there was plenty of that down one side. And then if you wanted to live your faith out and go to Mass every single day, 4 different times during the day.
So you said you were with sports, so which side were you on?
Yeah.
He was wrestling?
Yeah. So what was hilarious, right, was I think my favorite, but the funniest thing though is my freshman year, I get there and I'm kind of like, okay, this is fine. I jump into the football team and I'm like, most of these guys are a bunch of tools. This is not that Catholic. And so I kind of found myself sitting right down the middle, like having a lot of fun. But I grew up around the faith, so I had a lot of friends on one side and a lot of friends on the other. And what was hilarious is there were a lot of people of the Catholic side that were like, "Oh, he's a football player. Don't talk to him. Like, he's probably a D-bag." Like people would not. So you kind of, what was funny is you kind of had the rugby team eventually when I started playing there that sat right down the middle. We had parties on Saturday night, and most of us were in the church on Sundays, right? We kind of flooded that halfway line there. But I just played 1 year. I realized that it really wasn't good for me to play football on the team. I probably wasn't ever going to hit the field. And on top of that, I had always loved rugby. I started playing in high school. I played 2 years. They did not have a team my senior year. But after I saw a year of football and I was like 6, 7, 8 hours a day, I think I'm just going to go play rugby with these guys because honestly at that school, rugby was the bigger deal because the little rugby team was playing Kansas State, Creighton, Nebraska, Illinois. Everyone else, the football team's playing Baker. Who the hell's Baker? Like nobody's heard of Baker, right? So like we would have 1,500. We would literally have 800 to 1,000 people at our rugby games when we were at home. And I mean, around the field and loud. I've never played at rugby anywhere as loud as our home field. It's probably the coolest thing ever.
Did you lose your scholarship?
Huh?
Did you lose your scholarship?
I was able to transfer it academically. I don't know. They wanted to keep everybody around. What was funny is our school didn't support rugby hardly at all. So we weren't even allowed to call ourselves the Ravens. We were the Black Monks. Okay, so we got this little field off to the corner. Huh?
You can't do that anymore.
Yeah. So if you look there kind of behind this team picture, you'll see kind of like a 10-foot wall. Well, that was literally like 2 feet behind our try line. or the back of the try line, and all the student body would stand across the top of that wall. So it really felt like a pit when you were playing. It was pretty awesome, and it could get pretty loud. I guess a couple other things to note about college is college. I was pretty into my faith. College was easy because you're at a Catholic school. You had mass times all the time. The joke was if you missed Sunday mass, you were definitely going to burn because there were 14 options on Sunday in that town. So literally, like I think 14 hours out of the 24 on a Sunday, you could hit mass. So if you were missing it, something was pretty wrong. And on top of that, before like 4 of the masses, there would be an hour of confession. So faith was pretty easy. I mean, it was pretty easy. So I ended up running the youth program. We had a college ministry that would go do retreats. I ended up running that for 2 years. We would go do 16 to 20 retreats a year. These were usually confirmation retreats, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, high school. We would do retreats for like 2,000 kids a year. Probably have like 80, 90 kids, college students involved volunteering. I was in charge of all that for 2 years. So I guess I'll stop here and just say that I have a hard time talking about my faith. I think most men do. And so I've tried to always have the mindset of I gotta live it. I gotta show it more than I can talk it. Because if I gotta talk my way up there and vocally prayer and talk, I'm not gonna get there. But I can do things, right? I can be a leader. I can start things. I can try to do the best I can. So that's kind of what I did. I started that retreat group. One picture here that's kind of funny is we were coming back from retreat. We see this dead deer on the side of the road. Those are all rugby guys. We jumped out, took a picture, marked where it was, ran home from the retreat, grabbed a pickup truck, came back, picked it up, and posted it up on the front porch against the door of the girls' rugby house. This thing was like 6, I don't know. It was old and it smelled and it was hilarious.
How'd that work out for you?
They're fine. I mean, those girls were cool, but great story. They were really pissed at us. Playing in Kansas though, it's cold as hell and rainy, and I mean that game there was probably a -5. 5 degrees. I think the coldest was a Mardi Gras tournament in St. Louis.
Did people show up for that game?
No. Probably about 400.
Really? Wow.
That game there was against Wayne State in Nebraska. Yeah?
The enthusiasm.
Wayne State was a team. It was funny. We went up there and we had heard about these guys. We hadn't played them. They were one of the few clubs we played that had like their own fields, like 2 or 3 pitches, had their own clubhouse. I mean, they had it. And we went up to their place earlier in the season, and not gonna lie, we probably spent 60 minutes of time on offense inside their 20. And I shit you not, they held us up in the try line 10 times. And they beat us, I don't know, 35 to 14 or something. Because every time we make a mistake, 60, 80, 90 yards to the house. There's like 2 passes and their speed, and it was gone. Well, we worked on turtling, pick and goes, got them back on our field. This was the game that, because our school didn't paint anything or do any lines or nothing, some of you guys have heard this story, so forgive me. Our guys, we always painted the fields. Well, it was snowing, so you can't paint white on snow. So mainly that really like afro-looking kid there in the middle that's a little taller than me, they go down to the hardware store and get red paint. So they paint these lines and it's windy, and I'm not going to lie, when we showed up to the field, it looked like somebody had slit a goat's throat and drug it across the whole field. The other team pulls up, gets out of the car, and we just hear him saying, "What the fuck is this?" Because it was just like so not polished compared to what they were playing on. We beat them I think we beat them 42-6 that second time. But anyways, that was a fun day. Really, I think that's all you need to know. I had got a major in business. That's about it.
Were you guys competitive against like bigger D1 schools that are playing?
Yeah, we qualified for nationals twice, but they were always during our finals, and our school would not make an exception. So we never went to nationals. We beat Kansas 3 times while I was there. We beat K-State 2 or 3. Always beat Creighton. We never lost to Creighton. Other big schools. Did you ever play Truman State, Blake? Did you ever hear of Truman State?
No.
Pretty good.
I've heard of them, but
They're D2. That was kind of our big rival because they kind of had it going too. But yeah, we were competitive. I think my junior, senior year, I think we lost maybe 4 games combined those 2 years. I mean, we were really solid.
How many games were in a season?
I want to say 12 at the time, 10. I mean, we would play because we didn't have anything better to do. We would play we'd play fall and spring. I would say we'd probably play 16 games between the 2 seasons, probably something like that. But it was always, I mean, it was ghetto. It was jumping in cars and just carpooling 3 hours and guys splitting gas. And I'm not gonna lie, the biggest guy we had on our team was a big farmer that was like 6'5", 270, and we're getting ready to play Truman State, and he gets to the field and he's like, "Guys, I don't feel so well." And we're like, "Russell, what the hell? What did you?" It's like I couldn't help. I went to the KFC buffet. I mean, an hour before the game. So this was not. We had a coach for 1 semester. We were player coached all the way through.
Did you player coach?
No, I never player coached. No. We had a kid named Randy Lewis who started the club, and he did get some run with the Eagles training sides. That was kind of the guy that founded it, and then his younger brother kept training us through, so whatever. Let's move on. I brought up hard work. This was one of my kind of favorite sayings, is that opportunity looks a lot like hard work. I think my dad kind of taught us that. Like, I'm very much the type that if you just put your head down and work, you'll probably come out the other side better. So it's just the way I am. It kind of drives Vivian nuts because I really don't stress very much. It's just not something that I do a whole lot of. I just put my head down and figure it out. But I bring that up because I'm transitioning now to adult life. Before I spent 1 year back in Dallas after I graduated. I was working for a consulting company. But a year in, I got an opportunity through a friend of a friend, to go teach at a newly founded Catholic school in Kurdistan, Iraq. It was the first Catholic school started in Iraq post the war. Okay, so what had happened was during the war, a lot of Christians fled up into the Kurdish region, which, not to bore you on it, but is kind of an autonomous zone that is almost like a separate country to the rest of Iraq. The war, the invasion of Iraq, the war in Iraq didn't ever touch that area. Like, no troops went up, really. There was no fighting up there. It's kind of been its own country for the last 30 years. A lot of the Christians fled up into that area. They live throughout Kurdish region, but the biggest area is called Ankawa, and it's a suburb of Erbil, which is the capital of the Kurdish region. So the bishop there, in an attempt to try to give the people living there more opportunities, opened up the first Catholic school with funding from USA government, the Vatican, and then whatever they could pull together. Because really the most talented people in that part, they're Catholic, they're bailing left and right. They're going to Australia, Germany, Sweden, US. I mean, so he's trying to give them a home and a place where they do have opportunities. This was his first big project. It's the school. It's a beautiful school. They opened it.
In the middle?
Yeah, that's it in the middle. When we got there, it was the first year of it, it was going to be 1st through 6th grade. They were bringing over Americans. They didn't really have to be teachers because the teaching methodology here is just different. The Arab world is one of I'm going to call it absolute truths and not a lot of freedom to ask the question why. And so they don't, in their schools, they kind of teach rote knowledge, like you memorize this, and this, right? Where here, the point of education really is to teach you how to think, analyze, and really analyze, right? Like, what is truth, what is not, what is beauty, what is not, like really teaching you to kind of think on your own and form your own opinions and whatnot. So we do that kind of instinctively. They do not at all. It's just not their culture. It's not it's not the framework of the religion. It's just not the way they go about things. So they were trying to bring that more Western analytical approach. So just having Americans come over there and do it, just teaching, interacting, that's just naturally how we kind of teach. So that's kind of how I got over there.
Did you have like a curriculum or?
Yeah, it was a international baccalaureate curriculum, which is the IB. If you've ever heard of the IB system, so they were doing the school in the methodology of IB. Now it is an official IB school, and now it goes for. After I got there, they opened a preschool, and now it's all the way through high school, and he's actually opened to university too. Wow. I've got a couple friends that I taught with that are here now getting their masters and doctorates and stuff in the U.S. so that they can go back and help,
How long were you there for?
University. I was there for 1 year. It was a great year. I guess a couple. That was my house, just a little box concrete. Erbil, just so you know, that's kind of downtown Erbil. If you look up, there's a big kind of fort right there. The heartland, the middle of Erbil. It's the third oldest continuously inhabited city in the world, from what they understand. After Jericho, and I don't know, like there's one other. I can't remember what they said. So where it looks like it's way up on top of a hill, that's actually just like city after city ruins, after city ruins, after city ruins, just being built constantly on top of each other. Alexander the Great fought Darius of Persia in the last battle against Persia about 30 miles from downtown Erbil. Just a very cool historical place. If you want to keep going, Arthur.
So to tie your charismatic to Evermuch traditional, he had a picture of Alexander the Great.
Yep.
Site too.
Yep. Exactly. Just amazing how far he went, right? All the way to India,
Yeah,
it's pretty crazy. I've always liked this. I've just put up some quotes that I've always found interesting, which was, until a man finds God and embraces what he is called to do, he will always try to become one. Again, I think until you find God, find your purpose, you're still struggling to become a man, right? I've tried to always keep that in the back. I'm going to keep going here. These are just some cool pictures in Iraq. The craziest thing about Iraq to me is how old the history is. If you go outside of Baghdad to the east is the birthplace of Abraham. If you go up here, if you look out here behind me on the right, that's the Nineveh Plains. If you know the story of Jonah and the whale. Mosul, if you've heard it in the news, that is Nineveh. Just a new name change. If you look, it's this one right here, the back behind me. If you look over here to the left, I'm sitting on the Tigris River. I'm on the Iraqi side. To the left, where you see the lights, is the Syria side, and out in front of me to the hill is the Turkish side. To the left, though, a very sad thing. This was right before I came home. You're hearing the gunshots and the bombs go off from the Syrian civil war breaking out. I was supposed to be there 2 years, and really I wish I would have, because right about the time I left, literally the refugees started flooding across the river. And so they really settled in towns that I was in all the time. I feel like I missed an opportunity to really serve when I came home. But again, just a really crazy historical, wild place. I learned a lot. The world gets a lot bigger, when you get out and travel. Your opinions, your views.
What year was that?
That was 2011, 2012. one funny story here is down here, a lot of times they would eat in creeks and rivers, and you would find restaurants and stuff that literally had like a pool of water that was constantly circulating. They'd have all the tables in the pool because that was a way of creating air conditioning. So this was just a really cool, cold mountain creek, and we literally set the picnic table right in the middle of it and whatever. But where we were this was a different area of Iraq. There's still a civil war going on between the Kurds and the Turks along the Kurdish-Turk border. And it's kind of just like under the table, and they just fire shit at each other. You know, just like, they don't really, very few people get killed, but there are like rebels up in the hills. And so we're right below those mountains, and all of a sudden we turn around, and three of the guys that had come over there for the summer program had gone up the mountain. And all of a sudden we start hearing whoosh, and bombs and stuff and artillery fire, and the Iraqis just start freaking out because they think these guys are getting hit, and these guys are up there just taking pictures looking like jackasses. And they come back, they come back down and nothing happened. But just kind of the craziness of what was funny is while I was there, I guess I'll leave you with this, is that in a lot of ways it was weird. As an American, we were less afraid of their country than the Iraqis were. Like, because they knew the dangers, and we were kind of like cocky Americans, like, nothing's going to happen to us. But there's just this when you live in total war tornness, it's just it's totally different. I can't really explain it, but that's why they got so freaked out, and our guys are too dumb and are up in the mountains and doing whatever. But probably the most forming area of my life, probably one of the most rewarding things. I don't know. Do y'all have any questions on this? I mean, we're getting closer to the end.
What was the community like there? Like, did you go over with other Americans? Were you trained with other Americans? Like,
so there were a couple Americans that ran the school, and it was me and one other American guy, another kid from Dallas that came with me. His name was Nathan. What was hilarious is you couldn't have put two more opposite people, other than the fact that we were both like 6'3". He was 6'4", I was 6'3". When we got over there, they literally thought we were spies or like undercover or whatever, because why are two non-military marked 6'4" American guys just like walking the streets in baseball caps and shorts and whatever? So apparently for the first couple months there was quite a bit of suspicion about us just in general, but but yeah, it was a really awesome time, but it was also a very hard time. And I thought it was going to be very hard, like third world country-ish, like living in dirt huts or I don't know where my next meal is coming from, or rice and beans was what gets you by. Like where am I going to get water? I thought it was going to be like that type of hard. Really over there, if you want to know like where Kurdistan is, it's just like here if you stripped out the majority of the entertainment industry. And what I mean by that is like movie theaters, bars, sports games, the things that we do just to go have fun and blow off steam, right? That's what's not there. But internet, cars, restaurants, shopping malls, things like Walmart. I mean, that's there. Running water. That's all there. But what it was hard about it is that they are incredibly nice people in the streets, but they aren't as welcoming as here of outsiders into their homes. Okay, and so what that means is, like, if we have a guest here, or somebody came here from Iraq and was in this community, probably every one of us would be like, come over to dinner. Come hang out with us at home on the weekend. Like, home is kind of where or go out. You are not going to be brought into the house, per se. So that led to a lot of times where it was just like me and my roommate kind of on our own for lots and lots and lots of time. I was in the best shape of my life while I was there because I had nothing else to do. And we would explore, but, we didn't have a lot of really deep friendships or didn't get to know, like, we knew a ton of people, but it wasn't, I guess we were just kind of socially isolated, is a way of saying it. Yeah.
So, were you there at the request of the bishop, or working with the bishop, like in the school?
Working with the bishop.
So, how was your kind of maybe faith formation life with for you and your buddy that was there too? And was the bishop involved? How much did you participate or engage with him?
Sure.
Or any other priests that were there?
Well, as you can imagine, the bishop's a very busy man.
Right.
At that time, he was the third youngest bishop in the church, I think, in the whole church.
Which is like
40, 42,
okay.
41.
How big was the area that he was over?
The whole of Kurdistan. The whole of Kurdistan.
How many Catholics was that?
I cannot tell you.
No idea?
100,000. I'm going to say 100,000. 100,000. He was a marked man. Okay?
Yeah.
In Mosul, which is one of the most violent areas of Iraq, just south of the Kurdish border, where ISIS really kind of set up home. Right before I got there, the bishop that was younger than him had gotten murdered. I mean, like wiped out. So a lot of my friends that were in the inner Erbil, that even some of the teachers I grew up with, some of them, their families, like in the middle of the night, just fled out of Mosul because somebody, they'd get letters or posts on the door like "clear out" or "you're done" type of things. Just craziness. So he's a very busy man. So I didn't interact with him a whole lot. We lived on the same property, but he was in another house. We were friendly and we talked a lot. He's a very, very, very good man, very smart. Faith formation was interesting. It was the first time in my life where I lived in a place that was culturally Catholic, but not as well formed Catholic. And what I mean by that is, over there you are Catholic or you're Christian or you're Muslim.
So it wasn't like the luxury of, look at all these parishes. It was like, look, this is the basic gospel. Is that kind of what
Yeah, like I would say people were not, I was surprised that people weren't as well formed in their faith. Like teachers that I would work with that were very much Catholic would be like, I don't know if I'll go to Sunday Mass. It's like they were culturally Catholic. Like you in those countries, I'm a Christian, that's a Muslim. That's what you are. So your whole identity is not really, I'm from Texas, or I'm from this, or I'm from that. No, I'm Catholic, I'm Christian. They're Muslim, or they're this, or they're that. That's the whole identity of that person, right? So it was very strange to be in a place that was just totally, I kind of imagine it like being Jewish. My family's been Jewish for 4,000 years. You know what I mean? I'm glad I didn't forget this point. In the part where I grew up in Erbil, or where I was teaching, the people there, what's different is most of the Christians are different ethnicities than the Muslims. Okay, so the Christians, the majority of them are Assyrian, which kind of comes from the Assyrian Empire. They're not Arabic. They're not Arab. They're not Persian. They're not Kurdish. They're a different bloodline altogether. And the reason that's interesting is they speak in that area, literally along southern part of Kurdistan. It's the only part of the world that this is spoken. They speak something called Surith. That's the language that all the Christians speak. It is the closest remaining actually spoken language in the world to Aramaic, which is what Christ spoke. So where we would go to Mass, we would hear it in as close to possible in the entire world of how Christ might have said it himself and how it would have sounded. So when it didn't really sink in until one time they told me, yeah, we don't have to watch Passion of the Christ with any subtitles. Because it was literally their language. Like when they start speaking in Aramaic or whatever, they're like, oh yeah, we know all that. So that was probably the most interesting historical part.
Were there no Arab Christians in the community? Or was it?
No. I wouldn't say so, no. Yeah, no.
Is there any tension between the Arab Christian community and
In Iraq?
Yeah, or just in general.
I don't think there's too much tension between Christians in general. No, I don't think so. What was funny though is the bishop was actually Arab because he was from Baghdad, so he was in a sea of Assyrian different ethnicity, and he was Arab himself. So are there Arab Catholics? Of course. It's just this area. Most of them were Assyrian. Yeah. roots. Anything else about that part? I could go on and on.
What was the food like?
Food was awesome. I had no complaints about the food whatsoever. I mean, it's very much like any Mediterranean, Middle East, bodies, that Middle Eastern type flavor. I mean, that was no issue. Very healthy, very cheap. I mean, you could go get a shawarma for like 50 cents. I'd probably get like 6 shawarmas and go. I loved it. It was very cool because some of it's still such mom and pop shops. Like, you would have 15 bakers down four streets, just literally making 1 or 2 types of bread. And if you hit it when they pulled it off the fire, it was the best thing. You were in heaven, right? It was also not interesting being in a city, in a place that was so walkable. You just kind of walk everywhere. My favorite thing about there for fun, pleasure-wise, was driving there was awesome. There were no rules. There were no lanes. I mean, you'd be like 2 cars in a lane and somebody would be sitting right in the middle of those, like, just whatever, I'm here, you go around me. They didn't have very many stoplights. And the way they regulated speed was with black on black speed bumps. So until you memorize the roads, I don't know how. Like, one time we were coming out of the country into this little town, going like 70, and this was way outside the town, and they had the speed bump that I swear was a foot tall. I thought the back axle was coming out of my car after hitting that thing. I mean, just annihilated it. In the bishop's car. Yeah, they're not marked. And there was no people. And you're in the city, you kind of see brake lights slowing down for no reason. Right? Oh, there's a speed bump. But when you're out in the country flying into these little towns and they set it a mile outside of town, just wham! My roommate, he wasn't buckled, slams his head. We're in the bishop's car, like, holy shit, he's gonna murder us. But to me, that was the most fun because literally no rules. They drive within inches of each other. I mean, it's just craziness. How they don't get in a wreck, I have no clue, but that was kind of awesome.
Next slide.
Yeah, sure. Any other questions about Iraq? I guess I'll leave you with this one kind of whiz nugget of that. Well, something I found very interesting. To me, in the Catholic faith, one of the most significant things that Christ did in the Bible is he had this one little speech about give the Caesar what is Caesar. And to me, it is the fundamental difference between Catholicism and Islam. And the reason I say that is because Islam in its truest form is a government system entwined with religion. It must be together to be fully lived. Christ, through that, separated the church away from the governing order, which means it can exist freely and independently and should of the governing class, which take that for, you can draw your own conclusions off of why that's so radically different, and why that sets, for some reason, I would say we're a little more peaceful on the Western side.
I think if I could just add that gives you a little bit more peace when you get to like political strife such as we've just experienced, where it's like, oh wow, there's a lot of people that are really hung up in these identities that they have in this political party and this and that. And Christ himself told us, look, render to Caesar what is Caesar's, that's fine. What we're talking about here, though, is a kingdom not of this world, like completely holy, other, and above everything that you're talking about.
And so on the radical side of Islam, you have the I can't live my faith truly if the government is not acting in X way.
It's a law.
Okay? If I can't have the law that's enforced, that is Islam, I can't live out Islam. So attach that to the government and now wonder why are there always fighting? Because now the government is also tied to my salvation. And that's a very different approach to religion, faith in general. So, you also there, I guess, you would see, for those of you that don't know, after World War I, when they broke up the Ottoman Empire, the British government literally went through and sliced and diced and created all these states. And they purposely put 3 or 4 groups in every single country that hate each other.
Right.
And the reason they did that is so that the Ottoman Empire could never reform, and they would never have a problem coming out of the East again. So you have all these countries that have 3 or 4 historical groups that absolutely hate each other. It's So there's no wonder there's just constant strife, because literally in every country they've put like patches of people that just totally dislike each other to this day. Okay, we'll move on. Mike, how am I on time? Okay, 10 minutes.
That was forward.
This is probably my favorite quote, and I think it hits home with things that I've tried to do, even with the arrows, is and going to Iraq and starting retreats in college and just doing whatever I could, but never doubt that a small group of committed people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has, really. So that's always been one that I try to just think of when things seem really big or like, this isn't going to make a difference, but you just do the best you can. You go to the next one. This is the founding of the arrows. For some people wanted to. The left up there, upper left, is a game between Argentina and the U.S. Me and my now wife Vivian were at that game, and it was the first time I'd seen rugby live really since I played in college. And I was just like, you know what, I want to play again. And I was like, I miss the community from college. A bunch of Catholic guys trying to do the right thing, trying to have a ton of fun, but also being men. Okay, I really struggle with wimpy Catholicism and nerdy Catholicism and just kind of like I'm just gonna stop there. Okay, but kind of this like just soft, like if you've ever noticed, like the guys that are always at like young adult groups and stuff, they're like it's just aggravating. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, I'm gonna just stop. But I think you all know kind of what I'm alluding to.
Yeah.
And I was like, I miss that group of guys from college that could go out and tell each other, let's go to mass on Sunday, but let's smack people on Saturdays. Let's party on Saturday nights. Let's have a good old big time. Invite everyone that we know to join us. I miss that, and I was just like, you know what? Houston has 3 Catholic schools that play rugby. Surely we can get a men's team, because I had gone to some of the Woodlands practices, and I was like, I'm not interested in that. I mean, the first practice, they're like, yeah, we're going to take a bus up to Dallas and kick their ass, and they'll be pouring on the bus. I was like, one, why? Like, who wants to do that? To what end? And that was just hilarious to me. I was kind of laughing, but I was like, I don't want to be a part of that. That was one experience I had. Another time, right before I went to Iraq, I actually went out to a rugby practice at a team. I looked up where I worked, and I picked the closest club. I read nothing about them.
Who was it?
I just picked it because it was the closest thing to work. I could get off work, go play rugby, go home, and not have to go home, go to rugby. I stroll out to the field. I sit down, start putting up my boots, and realize it's the gay men's rugby club in Dallas, called the Dallas Diablos, which I have nothing against, that's fine, but that was a different level than what I was ever used to playing at all. But I couldn't just walk off the field. So I practiced that whole practice. It was just very funny, kind of awkward, but just kind of the rugby community. I like that it's so. I do appreciate the aspect that if you want to play it, you can play it, right? I do appreciate that aspect. But I was like, we got lots of Catholics here, and I asked Vivian. She knows this now, but I asked Vivian while we were in the stadium, I'm going to do this. And I looked at my buddy Andrew, who's this one down here on the left. I'll tell you a little bit more about him. I said, hey, man, you played with me in college. You want to start this team? He's like, that would be awesome. I said, okay, we do it. What Vivian didn't know at that time is we had just started dating. And she asked me one time, what if I would have said no? And I said, we probably wouldn't have gotten married. Because that would have just told me that, you're not cool with, me doing these type of things that I love to do, But she said yes. Vivian is actually, she's this little girl right here in the front, is actually kind of the first Arrows mom. First year, she was literally one of our guys, Brian Merca, came over like second or third game. Vivian, get the tape. His ear's bleeding. And he's like, I'm going to hold the tape here, Vivian. You just wrap my head. And she's like, I don't know what to do, you know? So, like, she's kind of done everything. But, yeah, I just wanted a group of guys that were potentially in their faith. If they weren't, could learn more about the faith. And I knew I was going to get married one day, and I wanted to be around guys that, one, my wife appreciated and thought were beneficial, and would also create a community for her to be a part of as well. And I think we've done. I think that's what we've done, right? I think we've just got a great group of guys that enjoy doing things the right way, being men, you know, but trying to do the very best they can. Andrew is actually the one that came up with the Arrows name. We were talking one day, and we were thinking about different names, and we had kind of settled on St. Sebastian. And then he goes, Mike, why don't we call them the Arrows? And I was like, we're going to name the club after the thing that murdered the dude? You know, like,
They didn't.
or whatever that you know that they shot. He goes, well, Mike, I looked it up. There's like 16 schools in the U.S. that are St. Sebastian Arrows. And I was like, all right, well, if other Catholics are doing it, we'll go with the Arrows. I tried to pick a couple colors that were not being used really around the city or in the greater rugby community in Texas. I know black kind of is, but gold was really not at all. He played one game and tore out his shoulder completely. Had to get a plate or something put in against Bay Area. I'm still not so sure our scrum's ever been better than that first game. Because we went into Bay Area and torched their scrum on the very first,
which didn't happen for several years.
4 more years later. I'm still not sure we've done it since. But just to give you an idea, a funny story. He comes back from working out right before the season. He goes, Mike, I cannot move. This is the next day after he worked out. I go, Andrew, why? Andrew's about 360 and about, 5'10", but he can move pretty good. He goes, I can't move, Mike. I can't get up the stairs. I'm like, why? He goes, well, I haven't squatted in like 6 years. And I said, okay, well, what'd you do? He goes, I did 16 reps at 315. I go, we're going to have a scrum. And, we did, but he tore it up so bad, it was just like not worth it. And so that's kind of how the Arrows got started. But he didn't say it was going to help. I don't know if I would have started. And then very shortly after, I met Blake through a mutual friend of my family that somehow Blake knew. Somehow we connected. Blake's obviously.
It was a sales call. I call
Yeah, it was a random sales call. The first time me and Blake met, he was like, "I'm done playing rugby," and I was like, "Well, damn." But eventually came back. So Blake is every bit the founding member of the Arrows as I am. Just so you know, in case you care, my grandpa has seen an Arrows game. My 95-year-old grandpa from Ohio was down. He did see it. I had never played a sport in my life with my brother Steve because he's 6 years younger than me. None of my other brothers have ever played rugby. We needed a guy. Steve played. That was a really cool Arrows moment. My mom and my dad.
So in the early days, it was a struggle to get 15 on the field, for sure. Like every single game.
Spring.
Yeah.
So we were taking coaches, anybody we could find.
I put that one up there in the front right corner because that's kind of one of the very first advertisements or banners we ever put on Facebook.
I remember that stock photo well.
Yeah, I did too.
We wore it out.
Strip that thing right off Google.
Yeah.
That picture there in the middle is the first ever Arrows Cup match win.
That was against Kingwood?
That was Galveston.
Oh,
The
Galveston.
one win of
Yeah.
that season, we blew it out. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one.
I'll share a story.
You scored.
Yeah, it's the first game Blake actually let me score. I was right next to him. Nobody was around. He fed me the
They
ball.
were at the 5-yard line and Blake just.
It wasn't the 5, okay?
Yeah.
It wasn't the 5.
Okay, the 6.5.
6.5. So Blake very unselfishly. I was like, I'm right here, Blake. I'm right here, Blake.
I
And he,
kind of remember that. Yeah.
And I remember that very well.
That was like near the last.
That was the last game of the season, I think, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, other than that, I don't really have. Oh, next slide. So this is one thing that I had always thought of myself, and I had always kind of thought this was one of the greatest quotes of all time, and I was that one guy. I'm not going to read it. You can read it yourself. But then, I got married, and I'm now one of the 999. You know, there's some other guy out there, I guess. My wife Vivian really is kind of the first lady of the Arrows. She's done a lot for the club. If you notice, I think one of my favorite pictures, this is one up in the left corner. My brother Jake, who's wearing 15, we're all Ohio State fans, so all the wives got Ohio State jerseys. He's married to a girl that's 5'11". Joey's the one, number 15, is married to number 2. She's 5'9", 5'8". And little Vivian, when she first looked at this picture, thought it was our little niece. She didn't even notice that it was her, because she's about 5 foot flat. So that's one of my favorite pictures, because if you look close, she looks like she's just so proud to be there. So I encourage you to come take a look at that picture. Vivian is probably the most faithful Catholic I've ever met. You know, she's an absolute rock. She wrestles me too in the faith. You know, just completely challenges me at every turn. I remember early on when we got married, she would be like, "Let's go to mass on a Friday night." You have no idea how just frustrated I would be that we were at mass on Friday night. That to me was always party night. Like, that's when you celebrate the week's over, go out, have fun, and I'm sitting in a church and we're going to go home after. Like, it took, she has really mellowed me out, really tried to. You know, I've gotten better at some of this stuff. There's still times it's like, Vivian, I'm not going back to church. We've been there 4 days in a row, you know.
I called you last Saturday, and you're like, "No, I'm going to noon mass on Saturday." He didn't sound upset about it. He sounded just fine with it. You know?
It's gotten easier. But I mean, like Friday and Saturday, like Friday night was like the one that was just like, "I'm gonna kill this lady." You know, this is hard, you know. So, but she's been a real blessing. I hope all of you get to meet her. She's absolutely hilarious. Somehow Arthur picked her to be the godmother of his child, but I did not make the cut. So that tells you all you need to know.
Yeah, so it's Muma and
who's a far better Mike.
That's what he said. I couldn't argue with him. So
man, that's all I got. I know I talked a ton, but you have any questions or anything?
Great job, Mike. Hi guys, my name is Arthur Hernandez. I've played for a couple of years. I've had a couple injuries, so I haven't been able to play lately. But I'm really excited to be here. I've actually never been to an Arrows Tails before. So my understanding is it's like a roast, so we all get to make fun of Schaad for like an hour, right? I'm excited about that. So I'm just going to share my brief story of meeting Schaad, and then I'll turn it over to him, and we'll go through his little PowerPoint presentation. But we met playing kickball, and I don't think I liked him. He was kind of a jerk. I don't know that that's